that we're together instead of shipping each other presents. We usually do like small stocking stuffers, which usually end up being really funny, kind of like white elephant gifts.
New stockings.
We're leveling up from basic this year. Names are embroidered,
Oh.
not just painted.
My family actually has had embroidered stockings for years.
I really appreciate underwear as a present.
Good to know. Do you have any holiday underwears?
I do. I've always been preparing for a Hanukkah no pants party, which maybe I'm throwing this year.
Have you ever thought about Santa's sex life?
I've actually done a surprising bit of contemplation into Mr. Claus's bedroom activity. And I think it's substantial.
Really?
No one is that jolly without sex.
I'm just curious about holiday crimes. I've heard a lot about people stealing to get presents. I'm curious if you've ever committed a crime related to the holidays.
You know, I've never committed a holiday crime, but I've seen a lot of holiday crimes being committed. Mostly fashion crimes, mostly committed by white women. Heinous rhymes with anus.
Whoa!
Liebe Zuschauerinnen, liebe Zuschauer.
Dear viewers, dear listeners, welcome to our program for today. We will read from the book Christmas Thoughts for a Good New Year. Particularly during this time, many of us long for more tranquility, for a time to reflect and to think about our life in view of the past year, and to go into the new year with fresh strength and new goals.
In das neue Jahr zu gehen. Dazu
This book by Gabriele, the prophetess.
Good evening. You're watching the Smoking Section with Stephen Helfer, and every week at this time, 7 p.m. Wednesday, we discuss the war on smokers and the fact that smokers are being bullied, and that in a free society, this is not only unethical, but on the part of any kind of so-called health-oriented organization, because to stigmatize and bully people is antithetical to any kind of medical ethics. And it's not only antithetical, but it really violates the entire principle of what our country was founded on. And I recently came across a very interesting quotation from Alexis de Tocqueville, who was a Frenchman, and in the 1800s he wrote and traveled about this country. And one of the things that he said was that it is actually more dangerous to enslave men in small ways than in larger ways. So for example, it's in small ways that every day we make decisions that either please or displease us, and that we exercise our freedoms. In the very big ways, we are called upon very seldom, and then again, it's very few of us. So, for example, there are certain kinds of rights that we take very, very seriously, and they're very important. Our First Amendment right and our freedom to travel. But, for example, really most of us don't leave the country very often, so we don't exercise that right. It's there more in an abstract way. Our right to freedom of speech, which of course is very important, which we are exercising here daily on CCTV. But when it comes down to it, very few of us really exercise that right in any meaningful way. Not that many people have BeLive TV programs on CCTV, and not that many people really get up on television or get on a stage and address large crowds of people. But in our daily life, we make a lot of decisions, whether or not to have a cigarette, whether to smoke, where and when, all of these things, where we're going to drive to, how we're going to drive, all of these things are things that we practice daily. And Alexis de Tocqueville felt that if the government, going beyond its bounds, started to put many, many restrictions on these small things, these things that everybody exercises every day, that this would gradually drain people of their will to exercise the important freedoms or their freedom in general, and render them kind of apathetic. And he felt that for a government, for a citizenry to be self-governing, they cannot be apathetic. They cannot be drained of their rights and abilities to chart their course of their day. And nothing has, in the last 50 years, nothing has affected our daily lives and the daily lives of everybody more than the war on tobacco. And for example, here in CCTV, not only can I not smoke, I would like to smoke, but not only can I not smoke, but nobody else can here. This is something that is strictly enforced by public health officials. So this is very persuasive, although most people kind of laugh it off and think it's just a small incursion onto their liberty. But again, Alexis de Tocqueville felt that by going after our small liberties, that it was actually worse than going after our big liberties. So tomorrow, Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights on our Facebook page, and we have sent out a mass emailing. We're trying to get people to see how important this is, because tomorrow the City of Boston, at their Public Health Commission, which is at 1010 Mass Avenue, will be considering banning the sale of tobacco to adults 18 through 20. Remember, these are adults who can choose to be in the military, can vote and choose the commander-in-chief of this country, can marry and have children, or can choose to have an abortion without any kind of parental input. So these are what we consider to be adults, and adults in the United States are supposed to be free to make their own decisions based on their own judgment. But here we have the City Public Health Commission saying, oh, you adults, you can't purchase tobacco. You can vote for the president, you can join the military, you can get married, you can star in a porno movie, but to buy a package of cigarettes is something that is, your judgment is not good enough. So here we have a society which supposedly all of these young people are educated at least through the level of high school, many of them through college. They all have access to the internet. They're all supposed to be so smart. And the city is telling them, well, you really can't make this decision for yourself. It's too big a decision. So really what the Public Health Commission is trying to do, and I have no doubt that they are salivating to do this, is to take away the liberty, to curtail the liberty of adult Americans. And tobacco itself is not the issue. The issue is, are we going to let this happen? We as citizenry, are we going to give up our self-government in our daily lives, those small things that we practice daily that Alexis de Tocqueville talked about, or are we going to let the Boston Public Health Commission decide for us? Now, according to the Health Commission and according to Mayor Walsh, who promoted this, I have no doubt at the behest of anti-smoking groups who have a lot of power and a lot of money, it is to prevent 18 through 21-year-olds who buy cigarettes and then supposedly give them to teenagers. But that is ridiculous because according to all the data, government data, and all the surveys, the teenage smoking rate right now in this country is at a 40-year low. More teenagers smoke marijuana, more teenagers experiment with prescription drugs and drink than smoke tobacco. So this crisis that the government is supposed to protect us from is not a crisis at all. As a matter of fact, it seems that the anti-smoking movement has been very, very successful in getting the teenage smoking rate to drop so low. Actually, not only that, but the adult smoking rate is also quite low. Now, this isn't entirely a good thing, in my opinion, for many reasons, but for one reason is it's just possible that when people smoke, they become less inclined to do things that other people may say are even worse for them. A primary example of that is that last year, almost 1,300 people in Massachusetts overdosed with opioid drugs. That means they died, many of them in their 20s or their teens and their 30s. Maybe if smoking were more pervasive, like I could smoke here and other people here at CCTV could smoke, and you could smoke at your local coffee house, and we weren't living in such a restricted environment, and we had access to tobacco, which again often eases people's depression, makes them more relaxed, improves their cognition, improves their ability to drive a car, certainly in terms of their reaction time. Maybe people might be less inclined to binge drink, less inclined to be so interested in cooling themselves out with prescription drugs, which it seems that more and more people in Massachusetts are, and more of them are dying, and many of them dying at a very young age. Now, even if you believe everything bad they say about cigarette smoking, which of course you know that I don't, even if you did believe that, all the deaths associated with smoking that they say are associated with smoking occur after 30, 40, or 50 years. So the average death that medical officials claim is caused by smoking comes to people in their 70s and 80s. It's important to realize that death from opioids, or death from violence, or suicide, or car accidents happen to a large degree for younger people, people in their 20s, or even their teens, or their early 30s. So for someone to say, oh, well, he died from smoking at the age of 85, well, first of all, there's the question of how do you know he died from smoking? I mean, there are plenty of people who are dying at the age of 85 and younger who never smoked a cigarette in their life. But even if you did say that, we are not talking about something that is a public health crisis or that is even tragic, because when people get in their 70s and 80s, I know that these days everybody wants to live at least until 100, But this is not something that is tragic or, again, a public health crisis. So we know that the smoking rate among people between the ages of 13 and 18 is the lowest it's been in 40 years. We know that this group of people smokes marijuana and takes prescription drugs more than they use tobacco. So why is it they're so adamant to ban the sale of tobacco to adults, 18 through 20? Well, I think the real reason, it's like J.P. Morgan used to say, every man has two reasons for doing something, the good reason and the real reason. I think the real reason is because people in our government, particularly in the field of public health, have a very bad addiction to power and control. It's a much worse addiction than to any drug. Probably it's incurable. And they cannot stop themselves from wanting to expand their power. And in addition to that, it's what some people have termed stealth prohibition. They don't feel yet that they have the political will to outlaw tobacco altogether, but they can do it incrementally. So for example, if you ban the sale of tobacco to people 18 through 21, that means you are reducing the number of people who can legally purchase tobacco. So what they want to do is make it until no one can legally purchase tobacco, but rather than do it in one fell swoop, they're cutting back in terms of the 18 through 21-year-olds. So even though they say it's for the kids, and I think any time you hear that something is for the kids, it should raise red flags, because it usually means that they are curtailing the liberty of adults. And when you say it's for the kids, that can be very persuasive. But we have to understand that the facts are just not there. Kids aren't using tobacco, and even if they use tobacco, it would not be an acute danger to them. They would probably not get sick, if you believe that they got sick, until they were in their 70s or 80s. So we're not talking about something like automobiles or prescription drugs or heroin or gun violence or suicide, which you read about every day in the paper happening to teenagers. But so we see that this is primarily a way of gaining control. It has less to do with health than control, expanding the rule of government. And I think Alexis de Tocqueville was right that the government can see by doing this, by intruding upon our daily lives and our daily decisions about small matters that affect all of us, they can expand their power and control far more and far more devastatingly than simply by, let's say, saying that people can't have their freedom of speech anymore. So again, we have this meeting tomorrow, 1010 Mass Avenue, and people are talking about how the rates of smoking are so low among teenagers and so low among adults, and isn't that a wonderful thing? Well, I'm not so sure it is a wonderful thing. Many people in public health have noted that the problem with obesity has been exacerbated by fewer people smoking. And we also know that more and more young children, in fact, the rate of children being prescribed psychoactive medications has gone up sevenfold between 1990, according to the New York Times, between 1990 and 2010. Certainly, if pregnant women and children, and they weren't smoking as much, and their exposure to secondhand smoke was so much less, why is it that among young people we are seeing a sevenfold increase in their being prescribed being prescribed psychoactive medications? We're seeing that they get more ADHD, more food allergies, more asthma, and all of these things, and obesity, all of these things are increasing among children. At the same time, the smoking rate of pregnant women, smoking rate of all adults, and the exposure to secondhand smoke is going down. We're not seeing all of this benefit that we were supposed to see if the smoking rate went down. They used to always say, well, oh, smokers cost everyone all this kind of money in terms of medical care. Well, the smoking rate's gone down certainly about 25% in the last 25 years here in Massachusetts, yet the amount of money that the state is spending on medical care goes up every single year. It goes up far, far higher, and it was far, far lower when 50% of adults smoked. So when they used to say, oh, smokers cost everybody so much money, if we cut the smoking rate, we're going to save all this medical costs, I don't think they've saved a penny. And if you factor in all the psychoactive medications people are taking, all of the heroin they're taking, and the obesity, all of these things together, it seems, in fact, medical costs are going up as smoking rates go down. So all of these factors, which you can observe daily and which are very open to one's own reason, experience, and judgment, as opposed to believing what you are told simply because it comes from the Surgeon General. This is, again, very much what de Tocqueville said. If we are going to be self-governing, we have to not allow these people to infringe upon our daily freedoms, and we cannot take everything they say as gospel, even if they are the Surgeon General of the United States. So these are the many reasons that I and many others oppose this 21-year-old legal age proposal. And of course, the most important thing is freedom. And it's very few, there are very, very few people in public health that talk about, people in public health, or even people in the government now, that talk about liberty and freedom. They might mouth the words, but then they will turn around and say, oh, but we're going to ban this, or we're going to restrict that. Now, for example, there are many retailers in this state, and the tobacco taxes are close to $900 million a year. The Massachusetts Universal Medical Care is very, very beholden to tobacco taxes. This is important too. What about the freedom of retailers to sell to a customer what the customer wants? If a retailer wants to sell to an 18-year-old adult a package of Marlboros, why should the government intrude itself and forbid these two citizens from transacting a very simple transaction that really has no immediate danger? You know, you can say selling a car to an adult has some immediate danger. Selling heroin to someone has some immediate danger. Selling a six-pack to someone, if he drinks a six-pack, he could drive the car into a wall. But certainly, or selling a gun to an 18-year-old could have immediate acute consequences. But tobacco, again, the only illnesses that even people in the anti-smoking movement would have to acknowledge that the only illnesses that are supposed to be caused by tobacco only happen after 40 or 50 years of use. So again, we're not talking about acute danger. So I hope to see some of our viewers there tomorrow. Again, Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights will be there, standing up for liberty, standing up against the nanny state and the ever-expanding power of government, particularly in our small things, our small freedoms that we exercise daily, not seldomly, or not that only a few of us exercise, but all of us, and all of us do daily. Now, just I had the good fortune today for my single cigarette sales. I sold some cigarettes today. Of course, that's a violation of state law. I did sell them to an adult, but in case, again, now I've expanded my business. I am smuggling from New Hampshire cigarettes for a friend, and I'm also selling single cigarettes. So I guess I am becoming an arch criminal under the eyes of the nanny state, because again, the nanny state doesn't care so much about murder and that sort of thing, but they do care about small infractions. And these are the small infractions that we as American citizens should not allow to be taken from us. And again, this is all about prohibition by stealth. It's not that they just want to prevent kids from smoking, they want to prevent adults between 18 and 21, and their next step will be, well, maybe adults 21 through 24, or maybe another place that won't be allowed to sell cigarettes. They've banned the sale of cigarettes, at least in Cambridge, in pharmacies. Maybe they will say, oh, we'll ban the sale of cigarettes where food is sold. And this will be contrary to the wishes of those persons who want to buy cigarettes, and contrary to the wishes of those people who want to sell them cigarettes. So again, this is not coming from the public. This is not coming from the people. And we cannot allow the government to interfere with our lives to this degree. Thanks for watching the Smoking Section.